Good evening, this is James Robert Deal, and today is July the 29th, 2016. If you haven't heard, I'm running for governor, and this is my way of connecting with people around the state of Washington as efficiently and economically as I can. So the topic of conversation tonight is traffic congestion. But first, let me mention that I'm going to be down at Westlake Mall tomorrow evening about 6 o'clock when the more progressive candidates for governor are going to be holding forth. I will be down there with probably 500 flyers. I'm going to hand out as many flyers as I can. It's a good way to reach people that haven't been reached before, because a lot of people just don't know about my candidacy. They don't know about my website. They don't know about this radio program. And the system is sort of designed to make it expensive to get the word out. The newspapers are not covering the primary election to a great extent. They want you to pay for advertising in their paper because they're hard up for money. And to get on television, that's a lot of money. So let's talk about door-to-door transit. The whole idea of providing a more comprehensive transportation service. Why would we deliver anything less than a comprehensive transportation service? Well, there would be reasons. Back in the days of rail, the trains could not vary from their routes, so it was up to you to hire a buggy to get you to the rail station. So then when we switched to buses, the buses continued to run fixed routes. Not being very creative. Seems to me they could have said, we'll pick you up at bus stops, but as we're traveling along our route, if your home is a few blocks off the route and you're carrying groceries, the bus will depart from the route and drop you off at your house. Now that would slow things down, wouldn't it? But what difference does it make if there are only 2 or 3 people on the bus, which is often the case? So why would we settle for anything less than a comprehensive door-to-door transit service? That's what we get if we own a car. And we get in the car and we have our things we need to carry, and we go to the grocery store and we come back with our groceries. But can you do that on a bus? Well, I guess you can walk half a mile uphill or a quarter of a mile downhill from where I am and meet a bus. But coming back with groceries, it's not so easy. You can either hike a half a mile downhill or a quarter of a mile uphill. So it's a rather absurd situation, especially given the fact that here in Linwood at least, most of the buses, most of the time, are going around mostly empty. Now, people from Seattle say, oh, our buses are cram-packed. And I say, fine. I'm not opposed to bus lines. I'm not opposed to bus lines running fixed routes. What I'm opposed to is at night, after 7:30, when most people are home and it gets dark, very few people are riding the buses, even in Seattle. And at that time, you should convert to the vans and take people all the way to their home, because they're coming home with a load maybe, or it's dark and they don't want to take a half a mile hike or a quarter of a mile hike. I certainly don't want my wife in the dark, in the rain, standing on a street corner. I don't feel it's secure, and it's not secure for your children. Unfortunately, I have never had children, so but I can empathize with your worry about your children taking buses. I even disagree with the concept of the neighborhood kids here taking a hike down the hill to pick up the bus. Why can't the bus come by and pick each one of them up at their front doors? Then we could guarantee the parents a more secure ride. Well, that's what a door-to-door van system could do. This is an add-on service. It's a last mile service because we have a disconnected system. We have pieces of a good system. We're building a light rail, and we have the fast buses on the freeways, and we have the rapid transit, rapid route on Highway 99. But not enough people are using it for it to make a difference, for it to take enough cars off the road. Now, our roads, if you look at them at night, if you'll go out at 1 a.m. when almost everybody's home, which I do sometimes, I go out and biking at night because the air's cleaner, because there's less traffic. I have blinking white lights front and back on my bike, and I stay out of the way of other cars. I often ride on the sidewalk, and when I'm in a busy area, I don't challenge those big cars because a lot of those people are sleep deprived, and they're semi-hypnotized as they drive home on automatic. Have you ever found yourself driving on automatic where I drive to the bank. So let's say that I'm driving, but I'm going somewhere else, but I end up at the bank, and I say, wait a minute, I didn't want to go to the bank. But you're on automatic, you see. You're sort of in a little bit of a trance. So you can't trust people driving to avoid hitting the bikes, and that's why bikes need separate lanes and special consideration. We need bicycle freeways. So here we have these gigantic roads, yet we have managed to fill them up to the point where they don't function. People are trying to make a right turn, a left turn, and they can't get across the lanes of traffic, and so they slow down, and there are accidents. And most of these cars are being driven single occupancy. What if we could leave our single occupancy cars mostly at home and take a van? Now, there will be cases where you need to take your car, but if we could take half the single occupancy cars off the freeway and off the main roads, then those who need to use their cars for business or other reasons will be able to do so. Driving would become almost a pleasure again. But frankly, I don't find driving to be a pleasure at all. You have to remain attentive at all times, looking out your window, your front window, at something very boring. Line of cars ahead of you. And you have to keep your distance, not too close, not too far away, otherwise people start honking at you. Well, in our family, my wife does the driving. I don't like to drive. My wife doesn't like to drive. But my wife dislikes my driving more than she dislikes driving. So she does most of the driving until she gets sleepy. Our traffic congestion has a huge economic toll on our economy. Let me count the ways. Freight can't get through. It's slowed down. Buses and cars are slowed down, so they burn more gasoline, more fuel, contributing more to global warming. People can't get to work, so they're late, so they lose productive time. People waste this time driving, where they could, if they were riding a van and then riding a fast bus to their destination, they could sleep on the way to work. Get an extra half an hour of sleep. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Sleep is a beautiful thing. One of the things that makes life more endurable is that at about 6 o'clock, I take a nap. Sleep about a half an hour or an hour, and I'm refreshed, and it's like a new day. But what about the people who have to take the kids to work, they have to take the kids to school, then they have to run some errands, and they have to get up early and get on the road because Boeing parking lot fills up, 6,000 spaces full by 7 a.m. Are we Could we design a system more senseless, more wasteful, more disconnected? No, even if we tried. But politicians are conventional people. They're good at getting 50.1% of the vote. They're not good at doing critical thinking about transit and congestion and how to solve this problem. Jay Inslee, nice guy, sincere guy, but he doesn't have any great thoughts on this subject. Somebody asked him about I-405 and he said, oh, we got to eliminate choke points. Well, as soon as you eliminate today's choke points, there will be tomorrow's choke points, because time continues infinitely into the future. But we seem to have forgotten that. And we're growing. Washington is the most attractive state in the Union. Where to live, where to work. I don't like all this growth. Growth causes problems. It causes new taxes, new expenses. And with the reluctance of the Republicans to approve taxes, it's very hard to maintain quality standard of life here. So, how do we pay for something like this? Let me tell you, it costs less than any other alternative. What are the alternatives? Widen the freeways. It's faster than all the other alternatives. Subcontract with Uber to build an app and a computer system to run this thing on the fly, picking people up where they are and taking them to where they go, solving the last mile problem, getting you to the transit. And for those people who don't own cars, getting them to work, getting them to shopping on the Sunday, the only day they have off, getting them to church, getting them over to visit mom and dad. It costs an average of $724 to own and use a car. So if you used this system a lot, you probably wouldn't spend more than $150 a month. What I would do is I would charge by the mile for all our transit services. Figure out a per mile charge which would cover our operating costs. Not the cost of buying the buses, not necessarily the cost of administration, not the cost of building light rail, but the cost of day-to-day functioning operations. A transit system should be designed to do at least that, thus freeing up all the other money to build and complete light rail, to buy more vans, and you're going to probably need more buses because we're going to fill up the buses. The vans will fill up the buses. Then what you do is you give free transit passes to people who are unemployed. You give low-fee passes to students who apply for it, and you put them on an honor system. If their parents make a lot of money, they'll pay full fare. If they apply, they can get a lower income pass. Middle income people, maybe a small discount. But people who are well off, making a lot of money, it's a convenience to them to have limo service. Almost a private limo. It's a van limo from your front door in the rain, taking you where you need to go. So you can sleep along the way, you can relax, you can think about something. So, I mean, what's the difference between what I'm proposing and the van pools? Well, the van pools are great. The difference is that the van pools run fixed routes, carry the same group of people every time, and go from the same general area to the same general area. Or like it's all Boeing workers who are coming from Snohomish County going to Renton Boeing. They'll put together a van, and that way they get to ride in the HOV lane. I think that's great. But it's not as good as what I'm talking about. Because this way we wouldn't have vans carrying 6 people on the freeway. Well, we'd have some. Instead, we would use the vans to pick them up at their front door and take them to the park and ride, so then they can ride on a large bus. Reduces again the number of vehicles on the freeway. Because if we keep growing, and we will, and time will continue because it will, eventually the freeways are going to be so full it's going to be like trying to drive in downtown Peking. And then we're going to resort to draconian measures, well, not really draconian, but harsher measures, such as charging people per mile and toll every single road in congested, built-up areas. All the big cities, major towns, charge people by the mile. Well, I don't think that we have to do that. I think there's a better alternative. That would be a way of forcing people not to drive their cars and to take public transit, but without providing them with an alternative, it would be an oppressive charge. And let me explain. Because there's middle-income people and poor people who have to get to work, and the current transit system doesn't get them to work in any reasonable way without making transfers, studying schedules with little flexibility. What if they have to work an hour over? Then they have to get out their bus schedules and figure out or go to King County Metro Trip Planner and figure out, oh, it's going to take them 2.5 hours to get home. I went to an interview at the Seattle Times in Bellevue, and I decided I would take public transit. And I left early. And instead of a 15-minute drive, it was a 2-hour trip. And it didn't even get me close to my destination. I still had to take a hike. So you couldn't design a less efficient system if you tried. I guess you could. I've been in some third world countries where traffic is even worse. Manila, they don't have stop signs, and people don't stay in the lanes, and traffic just crawls along. So I got an email here, and this is David, and David says, you know, your math may be off, James. He says, because you're assuming that because it costs you $10 to ride Uber 3 miles from your home to the Linwood Park and Ride, and that if 5 people were riding the van, you could divide by 5 and the cost per person would be like $2. He said it probably would be more than that because the van is having to wind around to pick up its full load before it then heads for the park and ride. And I think that's a good argument. I am just using that as a working number. Maybe the cost, so $2 to go 3 miles, quick in your head, 200 divided by 3, that's about 67 cents a mile, I think. What if it's 75 cents a mile? What if it's $1 a mile? Well, let's find that figure where the basic costs of operation are covered. Let's charge that amount. And even spending $1 a mile, a person would spend less than $724 a month needed to own a car. There are a lot of people who don't like to drive, don't like to drive at night, they don't see well. There are older people who shouldn't drive, but they're not ready for paratransit, which should really be for wheelchair folks and folks who are on walkers and really need help, or people with dementia. They need to go to the old folks home, like in Bothell. Bothell has a place where older folks can go for daycare, elder care. I have preached this sermon to the Sound Transit, to community transit, to Metro Transit, and they listen. But nothing happens. So, elect James Robert Deal and something is much more likely to happen, because I'm not going to be quiet about this, because this is just another case of us not paying attention, not being critical thinkers. We're so busy with our jobs, making a living, managing the bills, which are always oppressive, never have enough money, seeing that the kids have a good life. There's little time left to think about such things. So we get out in traffic with our cars and drive. Got to. No other way around. But you would think our planners would be more critical about this and do more thinking about it, but they don't. You know, we're building mass transit. We've got these fast buses, and now we've got Link Light Rail. They're getting 65,000 riders a day. That doubled their ridership. I am all for that. Let's complete Link Light Rail in six years. It's so painful. They're dragging it out so long. They don't have enough money. And so they want us to vote to raise the sales tax and the property tax and the car cab tax to pay, to extend, to build out this full plan. They're going big. Well, if they put it on the ballot in November, I will vote for it. However, they really should plan to do it differently. Before building anything, we need to connect up our disconnected system so that what we've got now will work. Until the train is done, let's make our bus system work by having a way to get people to the buses. What if we had vans that would meet the bus and communicate with each other at various points along the bus line? So we'd have the buses running the fixed routes and the vans circulating the neighborhoods, and then taking people over to the bus line and waiting there for the bus. The bus will pull up behind the van, and the people get out of the van and get in the bus. Now the bus goes lickety-split to the transit center. That would work just fine. Delivering people maybe a half mile, a mile. Even if you live in Seattle, which has a lot of bus service, you still end up having to take a big hike sometimes, and some areas are not well served by bus. How would this work outside the congested areas? And I'm talking the regional transit area, or the downtown area of Spokane, or downtown areas of Yakima. How would this work in medium-sized areas, and how would it work in rural areas? Does it apply? Or is this just something that applies in Snohomish County and King County and Pierce County? No, it would be a great thing for the medium-sized towns, and it'd be a great thing for the rural counties. Some of them have fake bus lines, a few bus lines that go infrequently along a few routes. And people don't use it because, well, some people use it, but most people don't use it because it doesn't pick them up where they are, and it doesn't take them all the way to where they're going. So switch to a van system and pick them up where they are and take them all the way to where they're going. And have vans that carry 5 passengers, and vans that carry 10, and vans that carry 20, and small buses, and have big buses. And when you have a Seahawks game, or a baseball game, or a Sounders game, plan ahead and encourage people to download that app onto their cell phone and know how to request a ride, and have lots of van drivers signed up, and create a lot of really good jobs, because these van drivers could also get trained and become first responders. The van system could also deliver FedEx. They could deliver UPS. They could deliver for Amazon. Remember, in any form of transportation, you make less money carrying people around than you do carrying freight around. The big money's in the freight. So that's why Link Light Rail should also carry freight. It's why the vans, some of the vans, you might want to have some of the vans dedicated to that. Well, wait a minute, should government be competed with FedEx Should this system be competing with our postal system? Yes, I'm all for competition. The U.S. postal system competes successfully with FedEx and with UPS, and FedEx and UPS and Amazon use the federal system in some cases to carry the last mile. So government should be run more like a business. We should quit wasting millions and millions of dollars on empty buses running around mostly empty, not providing the transportation services that we need. Let's finish Link Light Rail and do so quickly, and let's do it with a gasoline tax. Gasoline tax? Boy, we decided not to do that with Sound Transit. Why was that? I am not sure, but I think it was probably the Republicans out in Eastern Washington who, based on their fundamentalist politics, oppose using the gas tax for anything other than literally for roads. These Republicans have prevented the building of a new bridge across the Columbia River between Vancouver and Portland. And the state share of it is actually fairly small. Oregon's paying part of it, Washington would pay part of it, and the feds would probably pay most of it. I don't have the exact numbers. But because the people of Vancouver want to bring light rail across that bridge, that new bridge, from Portland, so that Vancouver can be included in Portland's light rail system, the doctrinaire Republicans say, no, we're not going to vote for that. So Jay Inslee wrings his hands in frustration and say, I just don't know why these Republicans are so difficult to deal with on this issue. And he's absolutely right. And I'm afraid the only solution is to bollocks them really good at the polls in November and put some progressive Democrats in the legislature. The fundamentalist, politically fundamentalist Republicans, like I'm, who believes that we should just make government spend less and less, and let's tighten the screws on government to where it doesn't have enough money, and let's destroy government. I mean, the expressions that are used are things like, let's drown it in a bathtub, or starve it to death. This is an anarchistic approach. The government is not an enemy. We are the government. We, the people, are the government. And if we want a quality life, it's going to cost something. And the rich are the ones who can afford to pay more. That's why I'm in favor of taxing the rich and having a constitutional amendment that protects the bottom 90% of the population against ever being subject to an income tax or subject to an inheritance tax, at least on the first million, and exempt from paying capital gains tax, at least on the first million. We're just going after the super rich who have so much money they can't spend it all. Literally don't have time to spend the amount of money they're making. This state manufactures millionaires by the hundreds, by the thousands, by the 10,000s. People have fabulous incomes. We just need to tap into a small part of that flow in order to have a quality state, fully fund education, build the bridges that are falling down. Good grief. What better way to fund the completion of Link Light Rail than a 50-cent increase in the gasoline tax, at least in this area. It'll cost more, but it's good for the roads because the roads will become usable. You people who want to drive, need to drive, will be able to drive. So that's how it connects with the roads. And then it takes vehicles off the freeway, so there's less wear and tear. on the roads. So you can argue that a vote to build linked light rail and to build to buy the buses we're going to need on the freeways and the extra vans we need, this is something that improves the roads without having to widen the roads, which is inefficient in itself and causes congestion problems when there's people widening the roads. Let's talk a little bit about the mode of transportation. We made the decision in 1996 that we would build light rail. And at the same time, there was a movement to build monorail. The monorail would have followed an entirely different route, supplemented the link light rail, but the link light rail people were opposed to monorail, and they had connections, and they killed it. And it would have been a wonderful addition to Seattle. It would be like a moving Space Needle. I think it should be revived because we need to give proper service and do so in a reasonable amount of time to West Seattle and to Ballard and to points in between, such as Queen Anne. These people are paying their RTA taxes, and what are they getting for it? Not much. The engineering has already been done. The route should be adjusted. It should go right along the waterfront. It shouldn't go along 2nd Avenue because that's where the nucleus of opposition to monorail was. People didn't want a monorail sailing by with people looking in to their 3rd floor windows. And Seattle people tend to have an aversion to anything tall. They don't want tall buildings. They don't want tall monorails. At least not anywhere near their apartment. So, monorail went down. If I were elected, I would encourage the use, not of monorail, but of maglev. Maglev is a form of monorail. It does run on a rail. It's in the same family. Monorail is so much better than maglev is so much better than monorail. Monorail is so much better than steel-on-steel light rail. Why? First of all, you cannot derail a monorail. You cannot derail a maglev. The wheels wrap around the rail. It would take an explosion to derail it. Whereas a beer can stuffed into a switch can derail a steel-on-steel train. It's very easy to derail them because the rails are small and the flanges on the wheels are small. Now, steel-on-steel light rail is noisy. When it goes around a curve, the flanges rub up against the rail because the train is making a left turn. The flange is shoved against the right rail. And the flanges do not fit exactly within the distance between the two rails. There's about an inch to spare on each side or more. And if you look at the rails, the tops of them are not perfectly flat. They're angled downwards towards each other. And if you look at the wheels have a flange, but the actual wheel part is not flat either. It's curved slightly upwards toward the outside, creating a curve, a large curve, and the train rides in that curve, and as it goes around corners, it will slide from side to side with the flange rubbing up against the rail. Now, if you know what speed the train is going to go around a turn, and if you bank the turn exactly right, and do the calculations at the speed you're going to travel, then the train can stay in between the rails so that the flanges are not touching the rails, and then they wouldn't screech. But I guess they're just not doing enough planning. They're greasing these wheels. And so we're building light rail that's noisy. It's an old technology. It's going to be phased out at some point. But we started doing it, and we should finish it. It's not bad. It would be excellent. But they're talking about digging another tunnel under Seattle because there's not going to be enough capacity in the tunnel we've got. Once we start bringing people in, both from across the lake and the people who are going to be coming from the north, there's not going to be enough room in that one tunnel for all the trains that would be coming in. So we need another tunnel. So why don't we think out of the box? Maybe we should build another tunnel, but that doesn't mean we can't build a maglev from West Seattle along the waterfront through Queen Anne and on to Ballard and on to Northwest Seattle and then on up 99. If we had the vans bringing people to the maglev stations, it would have a huge ridership. It would be another route. And then when people get off, if they're not close to their destination, they can get a van to take them the last half mile to their ultimate destination. You need a solution to the last mile problem. Now, thinking longer term, there's talk of Elon Musk has come up with an idea for a very fast system that he envisions being used for freight. It would be a partial vacuum, not a complete vacuum, but enough of a vacuum that it would be easy for the train, the maglev train, to go through the tube at high speed. For passengers, they say it would be a rough ride because going around turns there would be high G-forces. I don't know, but if I were governor, I would work closely with California, where this is being developed, stay up to date on it, and see if there would be some way that Washington could participate in the design work and see if we could all together build such a thing. So we need to think long term, and we need to think about serving the rural areas. We need to make it possible for people to live in smaller towns. If there were fast buses traveling from Seattle to Yakima, fast buses going on to Spokane, knit the whole state together with a fast bus system served by vans bringing people to the fast buses. So, you know, I'm also in favor of raising the minimum wage. The only way to get money down to the poor is to raise the minimum wage. Literally transfers money from the top down to the bottom. It raises the entire economy. It puts more money in the system. People can pay for their own welfare instead of having welfare pay for them. So here's a person, writes in, this sounds to me like it would just add more cars to the road. I thought about that. Yes, when you put a van on the road, it adds one car to the road. But if you're carrying one passenger, then it zeroes out. You haven't added a car, it's the same number of cars. Now what if you carry 5 passengers? That means instead of 5 cars, it's 1 car, so you've taken 4 cars off the road. And this of course applies on the local level, where we're getting people to the park and ride, or we're getting them to the grocery store. We're taking people off the road, taking vehicles off the road so that the roads are functional without widening them. I repeat, a van system to connect our disconnected system would be cheaper than any other alternative, could be implemented more quickly, and I'm talking within 6 months. We could eliminate traffic congestion in the Seattle, Tacoma, Everett area in 6 months. So it costs less, can be implemented faster, and is the only solution. I repeat, there is no other solution. We need to find a way to make it possible for people to leave their cars at home. so that there will not be so many cars on the roads and freeways. But do our leaders grasp this? Do they think this deeply? No, they think about the next election. The Democrats think about getting the Republicans out, and the Republicans think about getting the Democrats out. And once they've gotten one or the other out, they don't do anything. We have paralyzed, split government. So what if too few people sign up for the van service? I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be overwhelmingly popular. I think you do not need a really large number of people using a van system for it to begin to be effective, because you can adjust the number of drivers. So all these drivers, I suggest, be members of a union. Not necessarily the same transit union that the bus drivers are members of, but if they are members of the union, then it will be compliant with the bus drivers' transit contract, union contract, that the bus system, the transit system, can cooperate with those who drive the vans. Because the buses can't carry everybody, and we do need a flexible number of vans, so we can sign up a lot of trained drivers who will drive these vans. We might even issue vans to people. And if a person is going to drive a route, let's say it's away from a big city, then his regular route is 15 miles, let's say from Granite Falls into Everett. So he's got a van that carries 10 people, and he runs a route, and he picks them up, and he drops them off at wherever they need to be dropped off. And he ends up in Everett at his job and delivers maybe 10 people in the general Everett area to their jobs or to a light rail station. So it'll work in any part of the state. So let's talk about global warming. Vehicles are a large part of the problem. Our air is cleaner because we've got these catalytic converters, but we're still burning a gigantic amount of oil. I live in a quiet neighborhood. The only people who drive on our streets are people who live here. I live on the side of a hill, and it's a favorite hangout for the skateboarders because it's a very flat, nice street, and because there are a few cars on it, and the skateboarders just love to come down this hill at reckless, death-defying speeds. So are we serious about reducing CO2 emissions? Well, let's do something about it. And let's talk about the ferries. I just was listening on the radio driving home today, and the news was that there's only a 1-hour wait at the Mukilteo Ferry. There's a 2-hour wait at the Edmonds Ferry, and there's a 3-hour wait down at Seattle. So why should there be a wait at all? What if you didn't have to take your car onto the ferry? Then you could just walk right on, take the next ferry. But how do you get to the ferry? Oh, you leave the car at home. You take a van, it comes right to your front door. It takes you right to a get-off point, and you take from the rapid bus, and a van takes you right down to the ferry. You walk on the ferry. And on the other side, you either rent a car or you take a van. Now, some people will need to take their car across. But what if you didn't need to take your car across? If both sides of the ferry had a van system that would take you on to a... you could have actually large buses waiting for each ferry. And then vans waiting every 5 or 10 miles to cover that area, that neighborhood. And then the bus would drop people off, and they could take a van the last 2, 5, 10 miles to their ultimate destination. And yes, that would be costly if there's let's say if there's only a couple people riding the van. However, on the whole, the system takes cars off the ferries, takes cars off the roads, burns less fuel, produces less carbon dioxide. And what about the school bus system? Go drive by a school and look at how many school buses there are sitting there mostly empty most of the time. Why does we have to have a dedicated force of buses? Well, the van system could carry the kids, whether it's a 5-person, 10-person vans, drive the there's a time of day when they get off work. We have enough drivers. They're trained drivers. All the passengers are trained passengers. We would have vans specifically for children. They wouldn't necessarily be associating with adults. Folks, we got to do something about our transit problems. Otherwise, our economy is going to grind to a halt, and we're just going to be stressed. Fortunately, I work from home. Now, I'm a broker and I need to drive around and see properties. But I don't do a whole lot of driving during rush hour. And I'm sorry if you do, but there's hope for you if you vote for Attorney Deal. So remember, send an email to folks. Just send them this link, jamesrobertdeal.org/radio. And on that radio page, there's links to everything else. So, I'm going to close out with a little bit of impromptu piano playing. Go over here to the Techniques P30. Let's see, what do I play? So that's it for July the 29th, 2016. This is James Robert Deal. Tune in tomorrow, the next day, 8 p.m. And I'll go out with another song.
Someday the Lord will come, that's what the good book has said. He'll be punishing the wicked and rewarding the good. And most of those remaining will be wishing they was dead. They'll be ashamed that they failed to do unto others. They'll be making up excuses, making up excuses. They'll be making up excuses, saying we just never understood. We just never understood. There was a wise man down here, he was a-teaching his truth. Matthew wrote his words down, unfortunately they were later burnt. Mark, who spoke a different language, but doing the best he could. Mark, who never even met him, wrote again third hand. And so it ain't no surprise, and so it ain't no surprise, and so it ain't no great big surprise. He wrote it down half wrong. He wrote it down half wrong. You sent us other prophets, you sent us messiahs and priestesses. Why, the one who came last year, she won a Nobel Prize for Peace. But they all are speaking esoteric languages that most of us don't understand. They are specialists to narrow, to teach the overview. And so it ain't no surprise, and so it ain't no surprise, and so it ain't no great big surprise. We still don't understand, we still don't understand. But there be some of us that's trying to do your will, and so we think we've got some right to ask one question still. Lord, Lord, with all due respect, Lord, if it was all so important that we understand, Lord, if it was all so important important. Why didn't you make it clear? Why didn't you make it clear? But there be some of us that's trying to do your will, and so we would presume to make one final request. Lord, 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 with all due respect, Lord, Lord, if it is all so important that we understand, Lord, even at this late date in time, please couldn't you make it clear? Please couldn't you make it clear? Lord, 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 we just never understood. Lord, 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 we just never understood. James Robert Deal, June the 17th, 2016. Copyright JamesRobertDeal.org.